So let's talk a little bit about scaling, because this is the topic, the highlight topic of the webinar is how do you scale this stuff, right? So I've got a product in market. You're as part of the marketing team, or maybe you're a founder and you're thinking about your marketing team. How does marketing and product interrelate now in terms of how do you make sure that you're doing the right things on the marketing side to support your product and that sort of barrier where people get into that first launch experience. So nowadays you have to work much more closely with product. So Eileen, start with you.
Thanks. I mean, you kind of already hit the headline that marketing and product need to work together really closely. Whether or not it's or in a sales-led motion or I'd say an unassisted motion, and like what's going to be really important is a very established rhythm of business. Like definitely every month is way too long. Probably every week might be too much, but you could start there, and where you have an agreed upon set of KPIs that you're sharing, looking at, and then you're coming up with some hypotheses about what is not working and some key results that are anchored on an objective about how to fix it. So that's what I've seen work the best, is really just that agree, and like the people who are going to be accountable for doing the work are participating in that meeting as much as leadership.
So do you see the product owner as sort of a partner on that side, or do you ever go to the product owners and say, hey, we learned this, you really need to get
totally. Yeah, so like in a meeting like that, let's say, week one, hey, this is this metric that we've been worried about for a while. So what we're going to do is we're going to go out and like get some data and bring it back to this meeting. And so week two is like a presentation about, hey, here's really what we found, and here's what marketing is proposing. Or it might be the reverse too. It may be product, saying like, we think this messaging is wrong and that's something that we need to fix. But the important thing is that in that meeting, you're both talking about the KPIs and how it's actually going in terms of business health, and then also bringing like insights and what we've learned, and then proposals for what we're going to do about it. And then it's important that the people who can make those decisions are participating to agree.
Right. Carrie, how do you think about this subject?
Yeah, so everything Eileen said, I would also layer in though that I think marketing, product, and sales all have to work incredibly tightly together. And so if we think of it like the Venn diagram, and they're meeting in the middle there, because like Eileen said, product might be saying, we don't think that's the right messaging, but the sales is really going to be that truth teller, right? Like this is working, this isn't working. And by the three organizations really working in lockstep of, okay, these are our business objectives, this is what we're all aligning to, and then you are meeting and on whatever cadence it needs to be. But especially, and like Eileen said, okay, we're learning this, and everyone comes with that open mind of, we might not be doing everything right now or perfect, and we're going to be learning, and so that everyone's open to that. And then, okay, we learned this might be a better message, let's pivot and try this, or again, this is certain ways people are using our product that we weren't expecting, let's pivot and try some new messaging around that. So yeah, you're just all three together are going to really give you such valuable insights.
And on look back, have you dealt with this, Nate?
Look back, no, because it's pretty much I'm doing all of it outside of the development. But I think in general, yeah, I've seen many ways where it can work. I think the only way where it doesn't work is when the teams are working in silos and the KPIs are not kind of making sense across. Like I like to put product on growth, because I think pretty much everything is growth. So I want the marketers and the product people on the same team talking about the same KPIs, understanding context about what each team is working on. If they are in different teams, then I think like a pod approach could work, where it's like you've got engineers, product people, and growth people, and they're working on their own set of KPIs. And again, I think context is key, because I think the issue happens when they're siloed and marketing is driving a bunch of traffic to your app or your website. The product team is not, they don't have a complete understanding of what messaging you're using, why people are coming to the website, what channels are working, what channels are not. And they're just kind of focused on whatever the KPI might be, conversion rate optimization. without that context, I think things can just fall apart and get very confusing very quickly. Like when I was at Freshly, for example, we had a brief learning period where we did have a different product team, did have a different marketing team. We were driving I mean, we were probably spending 5 million a month on ads. We're driving a ton of traffic to the website. Didn't really have close communication with that product team. They were running a bunch of experiments. So I'd have weeks where I'd look, my cost per acquisition, my numbers go crazy once they hit the website, like conversion rate drops. And I'm like, wow, my CPAs are horrible this week. I didn't change anything. Then I'd have to go to the product team and say, the hell's going on? And then they'd say, oh, we ran this experiment. And I'd say, okay, like that, you got to turn that experiment off. It's destroying my numbers. So the closer you can get them, whether you put them on the same team or you put them in pods, I think the better.
Yeah, it's a partnership. And the other thing is product people, if left to their own devices, will iterate on the product and the things that they think are great about the product, and not that, you really need someone at the sort of a similar level to tell them, no, this is what we're hearing on the marketing side, I think, that's informing it. Because the sunk cost fallacy for feature investment is something that is very real, right? So if you've built something that your users hate or that is not converting, you spent the time to build it. And so you need someone who the product team, I think, trusts. If they're not on the same team, it can be really hard to say, look, you invested all this in this, but we gotta cut bait and move along, in order to sort of make the best sort of funnel that we possibly can. So from a perspective of improving the product and testing, Nate, how do you use A/B testing and how much do you use A/B testing? A/B testing can be really easy on the web, and it can be really harder in mobile. So you have to judiciously pick what you're testing. And how much does A/B testing sort of impact your marketing and product development?
I think on the e-com side, on the web, A/B testing all the time and trying to identify, because you could A/B test every single page of your website. I think where's the biggest drop off happening? So going back to the kind of foundational data stuff, where's my biggest opportunity? Do I not get anyone from the homepage into my product detail page? Okay, let's test the crap out of the homepage to get that percentage up. So at least they see the product and they get them the next step of the funnel, and then kind of move down the funnel as you get more and more people into deeper stages of the funnel. I think in the app world, yeah, it's definitely not as easy to test as e-com. I think onboarding is a huge one, specifically for me right now. I'm thinking about what is the best onboarding flow to get you to that memory share, making sure all the data is collected. So we're using Segment, piping that into Amplitude, and just trying to figure out what the hell is going on. I think the other big thing for SaaS and for apps is free trial to paid, or whenever that decision is, do I want to join? Do I want to pay for this? Is testing that like crazy. What messaging are we using? How are we framing it? What's the offer? Is it monthly? Is it annual? All that stuff. There are different ways that you can do that. Revenue Cat is a very interesting one that Dustin, I know I've talked with your team about. We're probably going to implement very soon. They basically allow you to like A/B test that pricing page like crazy, and they're collecting all data on the back end. You're seeing your cohorts, your repeat rates, your conversion rates, making it very easy to understand what works and what doesn't, without a ton of code. So your team doesn't have to like come up with a bunch of changes to code and do a new release and all this stuff. Like we can just do it in one fell swoop on the back end. So yeah, I think setting up the marketing stack so that it is easy, or at least easier to A/B test, and then identifying, okay, what is the most needle moving step of the funnel that I need to improve, and going like crazy on that until you get it to a good point, and then moving further down the funnel.
Yeah, and I think to that point, you want a product team that can understand at the beginning and the inception, sort of the analytics and the sort of the points where you're going to want to A/B test, because from an engineering side, it can be very hard after the fact to say, oh, we need to instrument this. Let's add it in, right? It can be very expensive. Whereas if you do it right from the beginning, it might be a little spendier up front, but much, much cheaper, especially on mobile. So I think this is, in general, a solved problem on the web, and an emerging solved problem on mobile. Eileen, from the web perspective, how do you think about A/B testing?
Yeah, I had the experience of standing up a testing program, and at the beginning we were like, our objective was actually just to get a really high volume of tests up. Wanted to see what we could learn, and what we ended up kind of concluding is that we were going to draw way back and really test like what we think of as money pages and experiences in like, you know, free trial type environments, because we learned that we could actually, you know, have more trust in things that were more like the right decision for the user or the right messaging to put in front of them. So that's where we spend our energy now. Things like homepage, pricing page, in, you know,
Make sure you have the right tests versus more data that might not help you in the long run.
Yeah. I mean, because the to get, you know, reach statistical significance on a test can also be a challenge too, depending on, you know, how much volume you're talking about. So
And that's
if it's just like an interesting idea that somebody had on like a, you know, lower traffic page, the ROI for the team to even, you know, think about that question is probably not there.
Yeah, it can be really noisy, especially with the small startups as well, right? If you just launched and you just don't have enough traffic, you could be measuring something that's way out of band and realize later that's just noise, right? So I think part of that is having really good data people that can understand what statistical significance looks like, right? And partners you can trust on that team.